W420radionetwork.com.
All right, in San Francisco, Rich Walcoff for the W420 Radio Network with the Honorable Willie Brown, former mayor of this great city, also one of the leading Democratic figures in California politics for a generation, and former president of Harborside, which was the first and largest dispensary in California. I didn't know you were a master of cannabis, Mr. Brown, but nothing would surprise me with all your skills and talents.
Well, I'm really not a master of cannabis. But let me tell you, I came upon the opportunity to participate with Harborside. My friend Steve D'Angelo asked me to come over and take a look at Harborside. I did. I went over to take a look at Harborside. And initially, they had me doing some legal work. I became so interested in almost everything Harborside was doing, I started to become a spokesperson or in attendance at the opportunity to organize people nationally around the pot issue. That's how I ended up becoming the chair of the board and the head of Harborside, theoretically.
Yeah, now that we've seen 4 more states legalize adult use of marijuana, Montana, South Dakota, Arizona, New Jersey, in the recent election, there are now 15 states that have legal adult use of marijuana.
And 32 that have the use of marijuana for medical purposes.
Sure. So it's growing, yet it's still a Schedule I federally forbidden product that is lumped in with methamphetamine and heroin and the like. Do you sense that the new administration, incoming President-elect Joe Biden and first Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, will make concerted efforts to make that to make a change on the classification of cannabis?
Well, I think that the lead on classification of cannabis will have to come from the House. That is where you get the impetus to do it. There's so many other things that Biden and Harris need to take care of. That cannabis is not high on the list. But the minute it's presented to them, it will happen overnight for their acceptance. I'm going to guess that some of what Kamala Harris was doing as a senator will be handed off to some member of the House for the purpose of making sure that it becomes a reality. And she will be, I suspect, in those sessions with President Biden, advocating strongly for approval of if it reaches the desk.
Well, you are a good friend and perceived as a mentor to Kamala Harris for many, many years. She sponsored in the Senate the MORE Act, the Marijuana Reinvestment and Expungement Act, which would not only reclassify cannabis and take it away from the Schedule I, stigma, but also would allow doctors at Veterans Administration to prescribe pot. It would impose a federal excise tax. It would allow interstate trade. It would change the whole banking system. It would be an enormous move, but it is stalled in the Senate, and you can tell me why.
It's stalled in the Senate because you've got McConnell running the Senate. If anyone else was running the Senate who had any clear understanding and appreciation, and in particular Rand Paul and the people who are from the more progressive side of the Republican Party, if you can call anybody progressive on the Republican side, I think this time around there will be the kind of effort made to produce it, but I'm telling you, it's got to come from the House over to the Senate. And if that happens, believe me, I think the Biden administration will be enthusiastic.
Now, there was a time when Joe Biden was perceived as a man who could reach across the aisle and make bipartisan partnerships and alliances and the like. You were known for doing similar, cross the aisle efforts in California. Are those days in the bygone past?
No, they're not. I am telling you that the existence of Trump, more than anything else, has created what appears to be a point beyond which people cannot cooperate. Once Trump is removed, the national scene will be dramatically different. There will be people in the shoes of McCain, in the shoes of people similar to McCain who were there. And they will be the individuals who will be looking for solutions to issues that will not necessarily be flavored with the tribal kind of influence that has come from the Trump world.
When we look at the sales of cannabis worldwide, $12 billion in 2018, it's expected to be $31 billion by 2022. So we're seeing an exponential growth. And the other influential banking act that's being considered is the SAFE Banking Act, Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, which would allow cannabis businesses access to financial services, which right now doesn't happen because of federal regulations. But that's got to be key because the EU allows that, Israel, Canada, Mexico, Brazil. We are way behind the world when it comes to the business considerations for cannabis distribution.
Well, fortunately, again, a Californian will have something to say about that. Maxine Waters chairs the Financial Services Committee in the House, and Maxine Waters has been there now for 28 years. She comes from South Central Los Angeles area. She understands very clearly what the issues are. And being an Angelino and being from California, being an individual who is on the African American heritage side, she will be key. And she was really smart when she was a member of the California legislature. She's the woman who orchestrated the process by which Nelson Mandela became free as a result of the divestment effort. That was Maxine Waters. She'll do the same thing on the pot side ultimately.
Yeah, the SAFE Banking Act is as important, I would think, as the MORE Act.
The SAFE Banking Act as an opportunity, and it's because the non-cannabis world benefits from that kind of business, handling the financial transactions. My credit card that says Chase, I can't use it to get my cannabis products. I have to go to my bank and get cash and take it. Believe me, Chase, Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, every one of those operations would love nothing better than to be the persons who could do the transactions involving cannabis. Just think of what that would mean to their bottom line.
Yeah, that's interesting because, as Bob Dylan said, money don't talk, it swears. So we obviously see the incentive for financial institutions to back the SAFE Banking Act, to allow cannabis industry representatives to use financial institutions the way every other business does. But getting back to the MORE Act, the fact that we're seeing so many veterans suffering from opiate problems with PTSD and suicide, almost 1 an hour, 20 more a day of veterans in this country taking their own lives. It's total tragedy in so many ways. And the fact that cannabis cannot be prescribed by physicians at the VA, and that would be allowed under the MORE Act. Do you have some thoughts on that and what might be an impetus?
Absolutely. Let me assure you that if in the legislative process you are conscious of how you can manage it, you take pieces of it on a piece-by-piece basis, if necessary. Clearly, if you have the aroma of veteran needs being addressed effectively, you instantly take away the criticism that comes from people who say no pot. They have a hard time if some guy has risked his life to save our country and he needs some relief, a prescription by his physician. And his physician may be in place in a particular VA hospital. It would be clear that that individual and those individuals would be in need. Even the most strident person on the issue would have to relent.
Yeah, isn't it curious that it would possibly take veterans in need of a medicine that heretofore perceived as sort of this diabolical weed in the eyes of many in the old school view, but that's evolving and that's changing. But you've been around a number of decades to see the change in the perception of cannabis. So you just talk to me about how that is evolving and is maybe escalating or accelerating faster than anyone would have imagined.
Well, it's all because the business of communicating in this country plays a great role in educating people and changing the views of people. And social media does that probably more effective than any others. Social media can be destructive, as the Trump operation has proven, period. But on the other hand, it can be clearly informative, clearly uplifting in some cases, and educational. And believe me, what happens with veterans, we get better reaction when the world knows what we're doing with veterans. Many years ago, we only knew about the veterans in our own neighborhood, our own friends, our own relatives. Now we know the veteran who may live in St. Louis or Mineola, where I came from, or in Denver, or in Washington. It's amazing how the communication system can equip us to be sympathetic, sensitive, and humane, no matter where.
Yeah, and speaking of the evolution, I mean, Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect, a few short years ago was prosecuting people as an attorney general in California with marijuana offenses, and now she's one of the leading advocates to expunge those criminal records. And it would really mean a lot in the minority community, in the underserved communities, and the poor people who are disproportionately arrested, convicted, and sentenced.
There are so many people whose lives have been altered, whose careers have been destroyed because of the horror laws that we had in place surrounding cannabis, nationally and state by state. Kamala Harris, as a true prosecutor, obeyed whatever was on the books. She applied her skills for the purpose of the content of that against whomever might be so exposed. In the process, she clearly gained a considerable amount of knowledge, and it gives her greater credibility inside of the administration of Joe Biden to be able to say, I was there, I did it, I put some of those people away. Some of those people should not be continuously burdened with a tag that they were somehow incarcerated because of what never should have happened. The law was the law then. We changed the law now. We also have to change the history of the law to remove those disabilities associated with people who were so convicted.
You're very passionate about it. Are you optimistic that we'll see these changes evolve in the next administration?
I am certain that we will see the changes in the next administration.
That's awesome. Willie Brown, great to see you in your town of San Francisco, where you were the mayor and a longtime Democratic stalwart in California politics. Rich Walcoff on the W420 Radio Network. In case you missed any of this interview or want to hear more of it, the W420radionetwork.com. You go to archive there and you'll learn more.
W420radionetwork.com.